Hello everyone, welcome back to another video of CloudDeepDive. In today's video, we will talk about another reInvent launch, Amazon VPC IP Address Manager, also known as IPAM. I will talk about few customer challenges, how IPAM helped them to resolve these challenges, and a quick demo. So let's get started. So let's start with customer challenges. Traditionally, all the network administrator, they are using either a spreadsheet or their own homegrown IP planning solution or some application to manage the IP at the org level. Now, managing the IP at the manual level or in the Excel sheet, it's time consuming and it's error prone as well, that you can run into an error or can which can lead to some kind of big consequences, like your whole business can come down. And it's very time consuming and it requires a lot of care before you start doing that. It sometimes it became very hard to manage your routing and security configurations as well. Suppose you have a network firewall and you want to allow or block some IP addresses, you all have to do that manually from that sheet. This can also lead some overlapping IPs between some VPCs, and with the manual process, there is no way you can detect it. Sometimes you get to know when you're trying to peer those VPC, and then you get an alert, and then you start figuring it out. So there is no upfront alerts which you can get that these two VPC are overlapping. Sometimes it's very difficult and it slow down as well your troubleshooting and auditing purposes as well. So the one example I can give you, suppose you have an IP address which you want to track that with what all resources this IP address was allocated in the past. So with the manual process, there is no way you can find it out and it can take a lot of time. And similarly, if somebody is auditing your environment for those IP addresses, how they were used, where they were allocated, with the manual process, there is no way to do that as well. Another thing was the cross account sharing for bring your own IPs. So right now, if you have bring your own IPs, you cannot share those IPs across accounts. So that's a big challenge all the customers were facing with the current environment. So let's talk how IPAM will solve all these challenges for our customers and how it works. So what is IPAM? IPAM is a VPC feature that makes it easier for you to plan, track, and monitor IP addresses for your AWS workload. Few of the benefits is it helps you to organize IP address space into your routing and security domain. It helps you to monitor your IP addresses space that in use, monitor resources. So it will give you a consolidated view of all the resources, all your VPC subnets, what CIDR range they are using. It also give you alert that or show you that what all VPC have overlapping CIDR blocks. It also helps you to allocate VPC CIDRs automatically without involving you. So in case instead of developers or any person from your organization coming to you and asking for the CIDR block, they can directly use IPAM to get new CIDR block allocated to them and create a VPC. In addition, in IPAM, you can also set some rules, and if anything goes beyond the boundary of those rules, a compliance notification will be alerted, kind of generated, and you can see in your list that, okay, these are the VPC which are non-compliant with the rules which you have set up. In addition, it also helps you to enable the cross region and the cross account sharing of your bring your own addresses as well. So how it works? When you create an IPAM, there are few terms which you need to know before we jump into the demo and start working on it. One is scope, another one is pool. Scope is, you can think of a high level container within the IPAM which consists of many pools. So by default, whenever you create an IPAM, two scopes will be created. One is a private and one is public. It just to kind of give you a logical separation of your pools, that this is the private which you will be using within your organization or basically within your AWS or organization. The public you might be using with the outside. So just kind of a container logical separation between your pools. And what is a pool? Pool is a collection of continuous IP address range CIDRs. You can create a pool at the top level and then use it, that these are the IP range I will be using for my these regions or these accounts and all those things. So pool is nothing, just a range of your IP addresses. To show you some examples that how you can use IPAM. So suppose you have multi-region environment where your workload are running in multiple region in single account. So you can create a pool at the top level and say that, okay, this is the range I want to use for my AWS pool for these 4 or 5 regions. And then out of that, you can associate or assign that, okay, this particular range will be used for my one region, this range will be assigned to my another region, and this range will assign to my third region, and so on. So that way, you whatever resources you will be creating in this particular region, suppose you have two environment, pre-prod and prod, two different VPC in all of these regions. So no VPC will have the same side or range. So that way, in case you need to define any kind of peering or something, you will never ever have any overlapping between those. So that's one example, or kind of I can talk about that, how you can use the IPAM in your organization by using for where you will share your pool with the multiple AWS region. Similarly, you can have multiple line of businesses as well. So you can define a AWS pool at the top level where you have a big range of iCider block associated to your organization. And then out of this, you can give, okay, this particular range I'll give to my business one, then business two, and then business three. And then further, you can drill it down and create more pools under that. So it will be kind of a hierarchical structure where you have a top level pool. Underneath, you can define multiple pools, and within that, again, you can define multiple pools within that main pool as well. So you can go to any level of hierarchy, whatever you want to do. So next, let's go to our console and see how you can enable IPAM and how it works. So I am on my AWS console, and if you go to all services, under networking and content delivery, you will find Amazon VPC IP Address Manager. So IPAM you can create for a single account, or you want to create it for your whole AWS entire organization as well. So if I go to settings, right now this is set up only for a single account, that only this particular account you can use it. But if you want to use it for your whole organization, then what you need to do, you need to define a management account, IPAM management account within your organization. So you can take up any particular account, suppose your network account, you will take it and you will say that, okay, this particular network account will act as my IPAM management account. So you will take that account number and you will provide it here as dedicated account ID. So once you do that, then that particular account will become the IPAM management account, from where you can monitor all your resources across all your organization accounts, across all your AWS organization regions as well. So from there you can monitor and you can allocate your new pools or siders to your different accounts. So that's one thing I just wanted to show. But for this demo, let's go and see that how you can create IPAM in a single account. So to create an IPAM, we'll go to IPAM and then we'll click on create IPAM. The very first thing you have to make sure you enable this, allow Amazon IPAM to replicate data from member accounts into your Amazon IPAM delegate account. So if you are using it organization level and you have different members account and one IPAM management account, you're allowing it to fetch the data, fetch the resources from your members account into your IPAM management account. And without selecting this, it won't let you create the IPAM either. Then we will give the name demo IPAM, description if you want to give. Second, operating regions. Here I will select two regions like North Virginia and Ohio. You can select as many regions as you want. If you have your workload in different regions, you can select those as well. And tags accordingly. So this IPAM will only collect resources from these two resources, not from other regions. So if you have multiple region workload running in multiple region where you want to use or kind of manage your resources, so you should select, or you can select multiple regions as well. After that, we'll click on create IPAM. It will create, so my IPAM is created, and you can see the two default scopes are created. One is my private and one is my public. Next, what we can do, we can create the pools. So we'll go to pool. So before creating the pool, you have to make sure that you are using the right scope where you want to create a pool. Remember, I mentioned that scope is basically a container, big container in which you will be creating pool. So here I'm selecting my private scope and I'll click on create pool. So first thing, you will give a name. So I will say global pool. So this is my big pool which I'm creating. Underneath, I will be dividing it different pools based on my region. Then you can give some description if you want. Right now, I don't have any source pool because this is the first pool I'm creating. I don't have any pool from which I can take some IP addresses. Also, I won't define any local. I'll show you in my kind of when I create the sub pools under this hierarchy what the local mean. For now, we'll just define a new CIDR. We'll give 10.0.0.0/12. So these 1 million IPs I'm assigning to my this global pool, and I don't want this pool to be used to create VPCs because this is my global pool. And then we'll click on create pool. It will take few seconds to create it and provision those resources or those IP addresses. Okay, my pool is created. So when I open the pool, you can see that this is the detail. Here it will give you pool utilization, that how much IP addresses are being used, and if there is any resource which is compliant or not compliant. Under CIDR, you can see that what is the CIDR block we have, and right now is under pending provision. It will take a few seconds to get provision. Allocation, here you will get all the resources which are using this IPAM pool. Then compliance, if any resource or what rules you have used to make sure that your resources are compliant or not compliant. Okay, so my pool is provisioned. Next, what I'm gonna do, this is my global pool. I will be creating two more pools, one for my US East region and one for my US East 2 region. So we'll click on create pool. We'll give a name US East 1, and then my source pool is my global pool which we just created. So you'll get information here. After that, it's asking that locale basically means that in which region this pool will be used. So out of the two location or two regions we selected for the IPAM, I'm going to use US East 1. So whatever pool I will be creating here, that will be used only for US East 1. That IP address cannot be used by any other region. Then you can assign the CIDR, so you can add by a range or you can provide a size. So I'll say that /14, like 262k IPs will be assigned to my US East 1 region. And right now I won't select this option. I'll do it in my sub hierarchy, and then we can do create pool. And similarly, you can create for US West or US East 2 as well. Then you can see I have this US East 1. So I'll pause and create for US East 2 as well. Okay, so I created for US East 2 as well, and you can see that hierarchy. So global pool, underneath we have US East 1 and US East 2 two pools. Now what we'll do, under US East 1 we'll create a development pool as well, so that any development related IP address will be assigned from that pool. We'll go to create pool, and then we'll say US East 1 dev, and my source pool will be my US East 1 because from there I want to assign all the IP addresses. My locale will by default will be US East 1 because it belongs to US East 1 region. And again, I can say that I'll want to assign /18 these many IP addresses I want to assign to my development related activities. Now here you can set up the allocation rule settings, which is optional. So let's see what these rule settings are. The first one is automatically import discovered resources. So if you want to automatically import all the resources which are created, for this CIDR, you can enable that. Second, when somebody is creating a mask, so what is the maximum IP addresses or what is the minimum net mask length you want to assign? So I would say that whenever someone is creating a VPC in the development account, they should not be able to create a VPC which have more than 128 IPs, and at a minimum they should have at least 16 IPs. So the max they can get 120 IPs in a VPC, and the minimum they can get only 16 IPs. And if they don't specify any of these, then I want that at least they should get 64 IPs. So I will say this. So if they are specifying this is the boundary, they cannot go below 16, they cannot go more than 128. But if they are not specifying, that by default they will get 64 IPs. After that, if you want, you can do a tag compliance. What is say that you can provide a tag So I'm saying the environment dev, if anyone is creating a VPC by using this particular pool, then they have to provide a tag. If they are not providing a tag, they won't be able to create any uh, VPC. So let's create this pool. Okay. Now if you go to pools, you can see that you go to another hierarchy. Under US East 1, you go to hierarchy for the development pool. So it's pending provision. So right now is provisioned. Now let's go to my VPC. And what I will do, I want to create a new VPC here by using this new pool. So we'll go to VPC, create VPC. I will do demo IPAM VPC. And here you will see an option that IPAM allocated IPv4 address block. So right now I have all the IPAM pools here. So we need to check that because we need to assign it from my development account. So I will be using 5301. So we'll select that. So the moment you select that, you will see that netmarks is by default is /26. That's what we defined, that if they are not specify anything by default, they will get 64 IPs. And you have only these two range, that /18 the maximum and /25 is minimum netmarks. That means that they can get anywhere from 16 to 128 IPs. So I'll keep it default, and then in the tag I'm not providing any tag. Let's see what happened, because we have set up a compliance rule that all the VPC created should have that tag environment and dev. So you got an error that the resource is missing one or more of the resource tag required by the IPAM pool. So what we need to do, we need to add a tag here, and then we'll create VPC. Let me make sure that what was the rule. So env and dev. Okay, I did a mistake here. Env. So see, my VPC is created. Okay, next let's go to resources, and you will see right now you're not seeing any resources. For that, what you need to do, if you don't see any resources, you have to create a service link role. And for that, there's a documentation here that either you can create it from console or you can create it through CLI by using this command. So I just created it in my IAM, and this is the kind of role you will see, AWS service role for IPAM, and it has a policy assigned to it and a trust relationship between your ipam.amazon.aws.com. So I'll wait for a few more seconds, pause the video, and before in meantime this resource will be populated. So my resources list is populated, and you can see 14 resources right now, showing the subnets and VPC. And if you want to show, it can show up to 50 resources at one time. So let's change the preference and see everything at one place. You can see that all the CIDRs used for the subnet and VPC, you will see in which region they are. And right now showing for both US East 1 and US East 2, because while creating the IPAM, we selected only these two regions. If you have selected multiple regions, then it will populate or pull out list from all the regions. Then if anything is created by using a pool, then you will get the pool ID as well. For these VPC, because their CIDRs are overlapping, so you will get a notification or message here that these two CIDRs VPCs are overlapping, and you can go ahead and fix those. Next, under the compliance status, if you have used IPAM pool to create any resource, you will get this compliance status as well, whether this VPC is compliant or not. Because right now, this VPC is following all the rules set by creating the pool. So that's why we are saying that this VPC is compliant. Next is IP users. Right now you can see that 100% users for this VPC, and the reason is because I created a subnet out of this VPC, this particular subnet, which are the same, which is using the whole CIDR range of this VPC, because I use all the IP addresses allocated to this VPC to create this subnet. That's why the subnet or the VPC IP address usage is 100%. If I would have used only half, then this range would have been 50%. And IP uses for subnet is basically the how many IP addresses I've used to create any further resource. Next, I want to show you the IP historical insight, which is good for the audit purpose. So what I've done that I have one IP address which I use for Elastic IP, and that falls under the category of your public scope as well. So we'll try to find out that where this particular IP address is used. So if I select the public scope and click on search, so you can see that when it was started, when it was created, and after that, if this IP address is assigned to any of AWS resource, you will get all the historical data. And if you release it, then you will get the sampled end time as well, that at what time you release this IP address. So this is good for your troubleshooting as well. If you have an IP address which you assign to some AWS resource and now released it, and you want to know that what all history this particular IP address, or whether you have ever used that particular IP address in your AWS account or not, so you can get all this information from here. Next, under the pool, if you see, you will see the compliance status under the pool details, that how many resources are there and how many are compliant and non-compliant. Under the resources, you will get the list of resources you have created from this pool. So that's all about IPAM. Let me know if you have any question, or if you face any challenge while creating the IPAM. I'll be happy to help you out and answer any question you have. And please do subscribe and hit on the bell icon. I will be uploading more video in future for related to new services launched by AWS. Till then, thank you so much. Have a nice day. Bye.